Hello, this is War and Politics channel. My name is Vladislav Novikov. Today we are recording an interview with Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Reports and local elected official in the state of Wisconsin. Hello, Yuri.
Hello, Vladislav. Thank you for the invitation. It's nice to meet you. Let's get through all that. We have a lot of things to cover. Let's get to it.
Yeah. The EU sees a way to negotiate it with Trump to avoid a tariff war. The European Union is preparing for a transatlantic trade war, but President Donald Trump's decision this week to postpone imposing broad tariff on Mexico and Canada has boosted the EU's confidence that an acceptable deal can be reached. Do you think that there of new tariff will force the EU to buy more American goods, or could it damage relations with European allies, especially when we need to work together on challenges with China and in the energy market?
Trust. Trust is the key factor that is required in any good relations, whether it is interpersonal relationship, whether it is economy, whether it is international relationship, politics. We need to have trust. If we do not have trust, we lose a key ingredient of our success, because all the agreements and contracts and everything that is signed, of course, there's a mechanisms. Those are mechanisms for punishment if agreements are not followed. But it's based on some kind of mutual trust that people will follow through with their agreements. And in case there is not an agreement, there's a mechanism for resolution. Well, now we need a mechanism for resolution, and it's not even clear if it's going to work, because the problem is that United States is losing trust, and I would say lost trust among its not just enemies, but allies. It's good where our enemies don't have trust in us. I suppose that makes us more unpredictable. But when we have our allies who have no trust in our ability to deliver on our trade agreements, that is a recipe for disaster, and it's a recipe for economic downturn, which is inevitably what the United States is looking at, based on simple principles that have nothing to do with specific numbers and agreements that have been signed that may be violated through tariffs and so on. Because at the very least, the whole argument that we saw between the United States and Canada and Mexico was in violation of the agreement that was signed under presidency of Donald Trump. So by Donald Trump, president, during his first cadence with Canada and Mexico. And what just transpired in the last few days kind of violated that agreement. So naturally, there is not going to be trust between Canada and the United States, Mexico and the United States, and also at this point, probably Denmark and the United States, Panama and the United States, and the list of countries that have specific reason not to trust the United States is growing every day. And after what President Trump announced about his desires to reshape the world, really, I think that European Union should be really aware of how unpredictable the United States are, but at the same time, how quickly United States can reverse a crazy action. It's a collection of bad ideas that at the same time, so far, thank goodness, are reasonably quickly either repealed or covered up or changed, because there is a back and forth response yet. Like what's happening right now in the United States is a slow-moving coup, but it is in a democracy, which means there's still a response back and forth where people feel at the top that maybe not everything is all right. So, for instance, when President Trump or Elon Musk, it's kind of hard to say exactly which one, it seems like Elon Musk pulled the trigger and the federal government stopped a lot of its spending, then voters and electors, those that are supporting Donald Trump, were upset. And that, I feel, was a big part of the reason why this ban on federal spending was in some ways reversed, because it horrified the wrong people. In Russia, for instance, that doesn't really matter. So because there really was no democracy in Russia, save for a couple of years here and there. So when government decides to, we're going to try to do this, we're going to say we're going to have crazy tariffs, because Russia had this experience when they first annexed Crimea in 2004, and they decided to punish Russian people by forbidding foreign food. And then there was pictures of Russian tractors crashing Western food, and it looked horrific because like Russian government was punishing Russian people for the fact that Russian government invaded another country. It was strange, crazy, but nobody could really do anything because that's what government decided. Here we have a different situation. People are pushing back, and they're pushing back both inside and outside of the United States, surprisingly effectively, considering how brazen are the expectations of the new the administration. So when we have Canada make some kind of a deal with Donald Trump that maybe is a deal and maybe is just a repetition of the old deal, and Donald Trump seems happy. Okay, so maybe European Union can come up with something that they already did and sell it as a new thing that they just agreed to with Donald Trump. Is that how things are going to go now? I think that creates a lot of mistrust, distrust, and distancing. And ultimately, this is a plus for China, because we can even, stop and reverse and sending mail to China, because that's what just happened in the United States. We first said the United States Postal Service is not going to be sending mail to China anymore, and then it would just reversed itself. So now we are going to be sending back and forth mail to China because we need to. But guess what? China is already in China. They're not going to be more China-oriented. They're just, they probably are, but they're not going to do it towards somebody else. So I think this is all leads to big reorientation of every country in the world that is used to dealing with the United States towards China. And that's a very dangerous precedent. And all we need to do is just be stable. Be stable and predictable, which is what markets want, which is what people who make money want. They want some predictability. And the fact that we lost trust in the world is going to be seen by allies as an opportunity to, I guess, work some kind of, that's going to be the leverage, is that people have to be unpredictable. That's the solution. It's a changing world, and not for the better.
According to the Financial Times, Ukraine has offered Trump special conditions for access to its key natural resources. An important economic part of Ukraine's victory plan is investing in its mineral resources. We are open to American investment, said Zelensky. Would this be a free and mutually beneficial deal for Ukraine? It will certainly benefit the USA, but what about Ukraine? After all, people here have been deceived many times, even by the USA. So they are very couching about such deals.
They have reason to be suspicious. You're exactly right. Ukraine has been on the bad end of many, many deals. And the world was hoping that after World War II, we moved into a different direction. And we're going to have countries that all have their own interests, small countries, large countries. Everybody's kind of equal, but I guess maybe equality is out. Inclusion is out. Diversity is certainly not appreciated. So I guess what does that mean? That means that Ukraine has a chance of appealing to President Trump, who seems to be a very transactional president and understands things in terms of land, in terms of land development, and talk to him about all the amazing resources, and plead with him really to accept the resources that Ukraine has in exchange for probably just allowing Ukraine to remain a state, to retain its statehood, because I think from the position of Donald Trump, that territory, that land was purchased previous owner Vladimir Putin, Russia, and so it's his to deal with and to do with as he pleases. Therefore, this is really, sometimes as a joke, I would say that Ukraine should apply to be 51st state of the United States, because that seems to be one thing, the only guarantee, because I have really bad, strong doubts about viability of NATO anymore. And so Ukraine has natural resources which it can offer to Donald Trump to develop. I think the opportunity there is to really say that it is important for the United States to have physical control of these resources in Ukraine. I'm not proposing the idea of putting American soldiers in danger, but I'm saying that Putin seems to be afraid of America, has been afraid of America, and so I don't know if he still is. And so the idea of putting American forces to defend Ukrainian resources will certainly put Ukrainians at ease, and I think Ukrainians would consider it to be some form of security for them, which makes sense because NATO troops would be good and American troops would be even better. But in reality, I think this is still a negotiation process, and it very well may end up being all for naught if Donald Trump just continues to dither. And I think that he can do, when it comes to certain things, he can do loud pronouncements and then reverse himself. In some things, he can dither endlessly. But it's interestingly, only Elon Musk seems to be the one who is willing to pull the trigger and to fire lots of people. He seems to be like a Donald Trump's kind of a henchman. So maybe there's a possibility of dealing with him directly. Maybe Zelensky should just communicate directly with Elon Musk, since all of those things are there. But on the other hand, Elon Musk has a good relationship with Vladimir Putin, and perhaps he's planning on getting his hands on those resources, no matter who controls the territory. So this could be an interesting but potentially philosophical debate where, from Elon Musk's point of view, he gets it one way or another, and Donald Trump just needs to look like a winner, and it appears that he will look like a winner no matter what is happening. If he pulled back with tariffs with Canada, Mexico, no matter what happens with the European Union, which it will just cause the European Union to form more tightly probably to itself, which is theoretically not what Putin wants, because Putin wants European Union to fall apart. But Ukraine's situation is, Ukraine is just there right now in a very desperate situation. And I think that is important to acknowledge. The situation is desperate, and trying to, with the past administration, which is, of course, it is fashionable now to throw all the blame at Biden administration. But there was assistance, there was help, there was a leader who supported Ukraine's fight to restore its borders and sovereign integrity. And now there is a president who absolutely sees world very differently, is not really concerned about concepts of fairness and equality. Again, equality and inclusion, diversity, I think it's not just the fact that it obscures, obfuscates a certain racist rhetoric, but it just really does represent things that he abhors. Diversity, equity, inclusion, though those are not things that Donald Trump would support. So it makes sense that he would be upset at it on every level. Still, I think Ukraine has to do what it has to do, and I think it's important that there's a citizen diplomacy trying to persuade our politicians and remind our politicians, especially Republican politicians, about the urgent situation in Ukraine, because of course they're being swamped right now with all sorts of calls about all sorts of things, because can you imagine what's happening right now in the United States? But it's important for people who are supporting Ukraine to reach out to their Republican representatives, as well as Democratic ones, but they already know and they agree, and push on them, Republicans, to provide more help to Ukraine, because I'm afraid that all of this conversation about natural resources just kind of takes up time. That is not necessarily what's useful right now.
Most of Ukraine's rare earth metal are located in the Donbass and in territories occupied by Russia. According to Forbes 2023 statement, the total value of Ukraine's mineral resources is nearly $15 trillion, with more than 70% of their reserves found in the Donetsk, Lugansk and Dnipropetrovsk region. Ukraine has large reserves of lithium and titanium in Europe, along with significant deposits of other minerals. Lithium is one of the key components used in making everything from smartphone to fighter jets. Could a deal be arranged like this? Mr. Trump, you provide us with weapon, we reclaim our territories that legally belong to us, and we share with you the resource from choose the occupied areas.
I think it is a generous offer, and I think it will be viewed from the position of strength that is what Trump administration views everything from. They feel a position of strength, and therefore they're using that strength. It seems that their strength is more fragile than they even suspected themselves, because they keep trying to do things that they have to pull back from. So it's not exactly clear how mighty is this strength, but it is currently being tested all the time. For Ukraine to offer everything that it has in order to purchase our weapons is a depressing situation, but maybe a very realistic one. And at this point, what gives us hope that unlike some situations where countries may be in need of weapons, and in the past, the United States provided weapons to Ukraine at no cost, because it would be counterproductive to enslave Ukraine in debt to the United not supporting, so it just doesn't make sense. But now this is a very logical idea because, well, of course you have to pay for what you get. And luckily, Ukraine is able to pay for what it gets because it has incredible natural resources. Whether it is, again, it comes back to how those resources will be divided between whom and who will benefit from it and who feels that they can get their hands on them. It's a bit of a race that we're seeing. I think that on a somewhat lighthearted level, but maybe not, Ukrainians can explore possibilities of, like I said, joining 51st state, but perhaps renaming Donbass Donald-Bus, the Trumpnetsk, anything that I think will attract Donald Trump's eye to the map and say, well, I think that these people like me, because it's very important to understand Donald Trump likes people that like him. So if you like him, and I think people of Ukraine can show that they like Donald Trump far more than they like Vladimir Putin, then it's practically a love affair. It's just important to understand that Donald Trump, as his guiding star, has good relations with Vladimir Putin. And I think, all jokes aside, to me, that is the way to understand Donald Trump's actions far better than anything else. It's kind of like if we think that Earth is in the middle of the universe and we keep having problems because don't line up. But when astronomers decided that maybe Earth is revolving around the sun, everything started to make sense. So I think in this sense, if we just assume, and not just assume, if we accept that Donald Trump wants to have good relations with Vladimir Putin, then I think we understand a little better of his pressure points and things that are interesting to him and valuable to him. But nonetheless, Ukraine is an extremely valuable resource, has lots of valuable resources, not just in its great people, but also what's inside the earth itself.
Thank for answer. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a candidate for USA health minister, claimed that the CIA thought USAID financed the Maidan protest in Ukraine in 2014 by investing $5 billion. I believe that CIA overlays 83 governments between 1947 and 1997. That's 1/3 of all governments in the world, and most of them were democracies. It's not about promoting democracy, he said. Earlier, he mentioned U.S. biolab in Ukraine, where LNG DNA from Russian and Chinese is collected to create ethnic weapon. Everything Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said sounds like Russia propaganda and disinformation. Do you really believe that there were biolabs in Ukraine? I live here, and believe me, our science still has plenty of room to grow. Even during the war, our army used Soviet-era equipment, and some hospitals still use Soviet medical devices. Even if those labs did exist, who would be working there and what would be they proposed? It just seems absurd. I'm also curious about the claim that the CIA financed the revolution of dignity in Kiev. Is there solid evidence for that?
Look, it's clear to me that those things are not happening in Ukraine. And it's clear to me and you that RFK Jr. gets this awfully sounds just like Russian TV. And it's kind of weird because he's a Kennedy, but he sounds like Russian TV. And it's important to acknowledge that RFK Jr. brings at least three kinds of people, important people, to Trump coalition. And that is people who are crazy and who believe Russian propaganda. And that's, not a small number, and certainly is growing. But he also brings together people who are just interested in a healthy lifestyle, but sell all sorts of crazy things, supplements, and things that are not approved by any government body. And they see in him as a spokesperson for them as well. And then there's also people who just believe in healthy lifestyle and fitness and taking care of their body. And they also see in RFK Jr. somebody who they can connect to and see themselves in a little bit. So he represents danger on many different levels. And the fact that he has a good chance of being the next Secretary of Health, essentially, Health and Human Services in the United States, indicates that I suspect there's a concern that people that will come after him will be even worse. That as inept and unqualified as he and pretty much every secretary in the administration seem to be, they are already like historically famous for their not being qualified, which is again kind of goes back to the whole idea of Donald Trump fighting diversity, equity, and inclusion because it supposedly promotes unqualified people. Well, we look at his cabinet and go, wow, what a collection of characters there, and RFK Jr. would certainly complete, but people that would come after him would be even more obedient to Trump, because that is the big separation now. Are you totally loyal and obedient to Trump or not? And in case of RFK Jr., him becoming a secretary is more of a payoff for him supporting Donald Trump during the election, so showing loyalty. But there's no guarantee that somebody like a Kennedy will be totally loyal to Donald Trump 100% of the time, and therefore there's a chance that he might disagree, and on and on. It opens the opportunity for communication and negotiation in this new palace politics that we have decided that is the best thing for democracy moving forward, is to have a president who is kind of like a king. We're testing the abilities of American government to do things. It also highlights that the right-wing extremism and the left-wing extremism kind of meet. It's a horseshoe, and at the ends are very close. And it kind of highlights to me that perhaps looking at things in terms of right-wing and left-wing paradigm is really not even necessarily helpful anymore, because we have more of an authoritarian dictatorship approach, and we have a more of a democratic approach where multiple opinions have a chance of being heard and have an equal validity, and then decided in a democratic process which way to go. Sometimes it seems that a strong leader does better, but other sometimes democracies seem to win world wars. So we'll see how it goes. But RFK Jr. certainly is another example of a person that is getting a pass in Trump world, in part because I think he's spewing Russian propaganda. I think that gives him a lot of opportunities and to be heard. But also right now, this is a payoff time. We'll see. He could have been, he could be not supported because he's been a Democrat in the past, and that's always, strike against you in this America, in this administration, in this 4-year stretch or 2-year stretch. So we shall see how that goes. But he could be, as bad as he is, better than what may come after him.
Donald Trump issued an executive order for the U.S. to leave the UN Human Rights Council and to ban future funding for the UN agency that provide aid to the Gaza Strip. What concerns might Trump's decision have for U.S. relation with the UN and other international organizations? In particular, how might there significant changes to various projects, including the USAID project, after those relationship? Bloomberg reports that the changes could open the door for increased Chinese influence. Do you think the White House understands this?
It doesn't seem to be clear that they do, because they just did this with Canada and Mexico and Colombia, pushing away our allies to find a new allies, whether it's European Union, whether it's China. But we are living through historic populism and historic times because, yes, of course, history is being made right in front of our eyes, but it's also testing the limits of populism, because Donald Trump was for a long time saying on his campaign trail these things that he is now trying to make reality. He is really trying to make them reality. And some of them are crashing and burning. And some of them may survive being tested by courts. We shall see. But I think things where he has more authority, even at first, he's doing more changes right away, but he's also doing things that he has no control over, it seems like, because Congress approves financing for USAID, and now Donald Trump and his co-president Elon Musk are deciding, well, really Elon Musk is the one who, as I've mentioned, seems to be doing the cutting here, and in a style of Twitter. Sending out employees, government employees, an email called Fork in the Road that I guess government employees refer to as Fork in the Eye letter that says you have a week to leave. And about 1% of federal workforce apparently took up Donald Trump on his offer, United States government on its offer, and we'll take this official buyout. And when we look at experts on TV who are advising government employees who are in this terrible predicament what to do, the expert on TV just says, do what's best for you, understanding that we have no idea what's happening and what's going to happen next, but you do what's best for you. All right, how is that helping people in Ukraine who have to do what's best for them? I think that Donald Trump is going to, the same way that he is ignoring legal limitations placed on him by Constitution of the United States, considering that those are restrictions that considered to be impossible by everybody else prior to him in the White House, in Oval Office, that it's hard to imagine that he's going to treat international agreements with more respect than he treats the U.S. Constitution, which seems to be very disrespected. And with this situation in front of us, he already exited Paris Climate Accord. He just World Health Organization, but then I believe rejoined it right away, or delayed it. It's basically chaos. The basic fundamental is chaos and good relations with Vladimir Putin. And we know that Vladimir Putin would love it if democratic countries would just argue and fight among ourselves. That would make him so happy, because that would mean that he and China and every other dictator in the world can start grabbing land or doing things inside their country that they were concerned about doing before because West was paying attention. With now, the West is going to pay attention to itself because it's in a terrible crisis. So that means that human rights all over the world are going to suffer, and really the cancellation of USAID is just another indication of how brutal Elon Musk is planning on slashing costs, but really just destroying the US government. And when he was destroying a platform that I really wasn't even particularly using for a long time already, because it was clearly full of junk, when he fired everybody from there and filled it up with more junk, then it was okay, because it's a platform. It's a social media platform in a capitalist society. You don't like this social media platform? Go to another social media platform. All right, so you have a lot of journalists and media people that are hanging out on his media platform. So what? But when he fired everybody, it didn't work quite right, and journalists couldn't quite post their quick observations and wit and wisdom, and politicians couldn't quite connect fast enough. All right, there's still other options. But when we're talking about the United States federal government, that's not acceptable. That is just not acceptable behavior. So we shall see where this goes, because half the country voted against Donald Trump. And right now we see the polls are showing that his popularity is a net zero, and Elon Musk is minus 11 negative. People don't like what Elon Musk is doing to U.S. government. And the latest CNN poll showed that 53% of Americans disapprove of what Elon Musk is doing, and 39% approve. So people don't like what is happening to the United States. And we shall see, because Donald Trump likes being popular. He likes being liked. This is not helping him.
Thank you, Yuri, for answering my question and bearing with my accent. It was both interesting and informative. I wish you a great day.
Thank you so much.
And to our viewers, thank you for your attention. Be sure to stay active. Give us a like or leave a comment. Your support means a lot